Evolution is all about how living things adapt to their environment over time. It's not some grand quest for perfection. It's really just about being good enough to survive and reproduce. Nature's creations, shaped over millions of years, are full of compromises and quirks that reflect the limits of history, environment, and biology. When you look at the animal kingdom, you will find all kinds of fascinating adaptations that show how evolution focuses on getting the job done, not making things flawless. In this first part, we are diving into how different animals show the trade-offs that come with evolution. They've developed traits that help them survive in their environment, but not without some drawbacks. Here's what we will dive into in part 1. The cheetah, speed at a cost, pandas and their pseudo-thumbs, ocean sunfish, a lesson in inefficiency, flatfish, a symmetry for the seafloor, sharks and their breathing constraints, salmon life cycle, the cost of reproduction, peacock tails and reproductive trade-offs, moth navigation by moonlight, the giraffe's laryngeal nerve, a long and winding rod. In part 2, we'll look at how these same kind of imperfections show up in humans, giving us a better understanding of how evolution has shaped our bodies too. Together, these videos reveal the clever yet far from perfect ways life adapts to its challenges. The cheetah, the fastest land animal, exemplifies evolution's trade-offs. Its unmatched speed, reaching up to 70 miles per hour in short bursts, comes at the cost of physical fragility. Cheetahs have lightweight frames and specialized muscles designed for rapid acceleration, but these adaptations make them vulnerable to injuries and overheating. After a chase, a cheetah often requires significant time to recover, leaving it susceptible to scavengers stealing its prey. This specialization demonstrates how evolution optimizes for specific advantages, even at the expense of broader resilience. The giant panda's diet relies almost exclusively on bamboo, and its adaptation to this specialized diet comes in the form of pseudo-thumb. This enlarged wrist bone helps pandas grasp bamboo, but is less functional than a true opposable thumb. While sufficient for their feeding habit, this adaptation limits their dexterity compared to other animals with more versatile hand structures. The panda's reliance on such a narrow food source further underscores how evolutionary specialization can restrict flexibility, leaving species vulnerable to environmental changes. The ocean sunfish, one of the heaviest bony fish, is a fascinating study in evolutionary imperfection. With its massive size and odd, flattened body, it has evolved a shape that may serve multiple purposes, deterring predators, conserving energy, and adapting to its unique ecological niche. Its large size reduces the risk of predation, while its flattened body minimizes the energy expenditure by allowing it to drift in the water column with minimal effort. However, this body shape comes at the cost of agility, making the sunfish a slow and inefficient swimmer that relies on its dorsal and anal fins for propulsion. Adding to its peculiarities, Its jaw structure is fused into a bee-like shape, preventing it from fully closing its mouth and limiting its diet to soft-bodied prey like jellyfish. Despite these inefficiencies, the sunfish thrives in the open ocean, a vast, nutrient-scarce environment where food is dispersed, competition is reduced, and fewer predators roam. By basking at the surface to warm up after deep dives and interacting with seabirds to remove parasites, sunfish demonstrate how evolution often prioritizes survival strategies that work well enough within specific contexts, even if they are far from perfect. Flatfish, such as flounders and halibut, have evolved a unique body plan to live on the sea floor. During development, one eye migrates to the opposite side of the body, allowing both eyes to face upward when the fish lies flat. While this asymmetry aids in avoiding predators, it disrupts normal skull development, creating structural inefficiencies. Moreover, their uneven eye placement reduces depth perception, making hunting and navigation more challenging. This adaptation reflects the compromises inherent in evolutionary solutions. The great white shark relies on ram ventilation, a breathing method that requires constant swimming to push water over its gills. It's a clear example of a functional but restrictive adaptation. This system lets great whites power their high-energy predatory lifestyle, but prevents them from resting for too long. In contrast, some other sharks, like nurse sharks, use buccal pumping, a method where they actively pull water into their mouths and push it over their gills using cheek muscles. This allows them to breathe while staying still, a handy trick for sharks that spend more time resting on the seafloor. The great white's evolutionary path, though, stuck with ram ventilation because it suits their constant movement and wide-ranging hunts in open water. It's a great example of how evolution shapes traits around specific ecological roles, even if it means leaving some flexibility behind. Salmon offer another striking example of evolutionary trade-offs, particularly in their life cycle. Each year, these fish make an incredible journey upstream to spawn, expending nearly all of their energy in the process. After reaching their spawning grounds, they lay eggs and in many species die shortly afterward. This one-way trip is the culmination of their life cycle. While this strategy maximizes reproductive success by ensuring that a large number of offspring are produced, it also comes at a high cost. The salmon's body is so depleted by the migration and the effort to reproduce that it cannot survive after spawning. This intense, singular focus on reproduction illustrates how evolution prioritizes short-term reproductive success over long-term survival. The salmon's life cycle is a perfect example of how evolution doesn't aim for perfection, but for good enough in a specific ecological context. The peacock's huge, flash tail is a famous example of sexual selection. It's all about attracting mates. But that big tail makes it harder to fly and makes the peacock more visible to predators. So it's not the best for survival. This trade-off shows how evolution can prioritize mating success over staying alive, with traits that work well in one situation creating problems in another. Moths provide a classic example of how evolutionary adaptations can also create vulnerabilities. Moths have evolved to navigate using the moon's light, a form of celestial navigation that helps them fly in straight lines. However, this adaptation becomes a liability near artificial light. When moths encounter street lights or porch light, they become disoriented, often flying in tight circles around the light source, exhausting themselves in the process. This misdirected flight not only drains their energy, but increases their risk of predation or even death. The reliance on natural light sources, while effective in the wild, illustrates an evolutionary compromise where survival in the natural environment comes at the cost of increased risk in the presence of artificial light. This is another example of how evolutionary trade-offs often prioritize functionality in one context but may lead to weakness in others. Let's talk about giraffes and their long necks. You'd think evolution would streamline things for an animal with such an iconic feature, but that's not quite how it works. The giraffe's recurrent laryngeal nerve, which connects the brain to the larynx, takes an unnecessarily long detour down the neck, looping around the heart before heading back up to the throat. This roundabout route stems from our shared ancestry with fish, where the nerve originally took a direct path around the gill arch. As giraffes evolved longer necks, that same nerve got stretched out along the way, making it much longer than it needs to be. This setup is inefficient and leaves the nerve more vulnerable to damage. Yet, it works well enough to keep giraffes alive and thriving. Once again, evolution shows us how it modifies what's already there, even if the result isn't exactly optimal. The animal kingdom is filled with examples of evolutionary trade-offs, where traits are shaped not for perfection, but for sufficiency. These adaptations, while often ingenious, reveal the compromises evolution makes to ensure survival in specific environments. In part 2 coming soon, we will shift our focus to human anatomy and explore how similar constraints and imperfections have shaped our own evolutionary journey. From the shared air and food pathways in the throat to the blind spot in our vision, we will uncover how humans too are products of evolution's imperfect genius. By examining these flaws and compromises, we aim to deepen our appreciation for the remarkable ways in which evolution has made life good enough to survive. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.